Hey guys, welcome to your first flipped video lesson. Today we're going to talk a little bit about solving some equations. Today in class, we started looking at some simple one-step equations. So we learned that when we're going to deal with a question that looks maybe like x plus 2 equals 4, if we want to solve an equation that involves addition, we have to do the inverse operation. And of course, the inverse of plus 2 is minus 2. So by subtracting 2 from both sides, we can figure out that x is supposed to be equal to 2 in this case. And we talked about how to deal with subtraction, and of course the opposite or the inverse operation of subtraction is addition. We talked about how we deal with multiplication. So if we have multiplication in our problem, we're going to do the opposite of that, which is division. And we talked about how do we deal with division. So if we have division in our problem, we'll do the inverse operation of that, which is multiplication. And that's what we spent our time in class today talking about. What I want to talk to you about tonight is what do we do in this situation where we have two operations in the same exact equation. So let me give you an example. Let's say we're talking about something like 2x minus 7 equals 16. So we're going to notice here that there are two operations going on. We've got multiplication going on at the beginning where it says 2 times x. And we've got subtraction going on here as well where we have a minus 7. Our goal here is still to get that x all by itself. We want to solve for x. In order to do that, we have to undo both operations. Now we all know about PEMDAS, P-E-M-D-A-S, and we know that when we are evaluating an expression, we go parentheses and then exponents and then multiplication, then division and then addition and subtraction. But when we want to undo the operations, when we want to do the opposite, when we're trying to work our way backwards to solve for a variable, we're actually going to undo PEMDAS the other way around. So let's look at that for a second. This 2 and this x are pretty much stuck together right now. They're stuck together by multiplication. So the very first thing that I can do, and the only thing, in fact, that I can do, is get rid of the minus 7. Well, what am I going to have to do to get rid of a minus 7? Think about that for a second. So hopefully, you said, the way that we get rid of a minus 7 is by adding 7, by doing the inverse operation. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do here. And if you didn't say that, maybe the next time we do this, you'll be better at figuring out what the inverse operation is. If I'm going to look at this, 16 plus 7, that's going to give me 23. And negative 7 plus 7, those cancel out. So all that's left is 2x equals 23. And now this begins to look like a one-step equation. And how do I solve a one-step equation? Well, in this case, it's multiplication. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So instead of, to get rid of this multiply by 2, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And I'm going to end up getting x is equal to 23 over 2. Now, if we wanted to write that as a decimal, that's going to go in 11 whole times and then another half. So that's 11.5. But I'm also very okay with you leaving the improper fraction. In algebra, improper fractions are going to be very helpful for us, so we're going to practice leaving them in improper fractions whenever we can. Let's take a look at another question. Let's take a look at something like x over 4 plus 5 equals 7. Easy enough question here, right? I've got two operations again. This time I have division and addition. The x over 4, those things are pretty stuck together, so we're not going to deal with those things first. We're going to take care of the easiest thing we can, and that's the plus 5. That plus 5 right there. So how am I going to handle a plus 5? I'm going to do a minus 5. The opposite of plus 5 is a minus 5. So we're going to do the inverse operation on both sides. My plus 5 and my minus 5 are going to cancel. And I'm going to get 7 minus 5 is 2. And I end up with x over 4 equals 2. Notice that x over 4 dropped straight down. And the 7 minus 5 is what gave me the 2. Now I have another one-step equation here. We've turned it from a two-step equation into a one-step equation. Well, how are we going to get rid of this divide by 4? What can we do to get rid of divide by 4? Well, we know the opposite of division is multiplication. And this is how we're going to show multiplication here. We're going to take this whole fraction and we're going to multiply by 4. And we're going to do this whole side and we're going to multiply by 4. And when we multiply both sides by 4, we're going to see that we have times 4 and divide by 4 on the left. Well, those cancel each other out. And on the right, we have 2 times 4, which is 8. And we end up with x equals 8. Simple enough. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to give some example problems for you guys to work out. I'm going to pause after I write each question down, and I'm going to ask you to try to solve it yourself. And then as the video goes on, you're going to see what the actual answer was. Now, I'm going to ask you to solve these out on paper. And you don't need to turn in that paper tomorrow, but I want you to solve it on paper, and then I want you only to write your final answer when I ask you these questions coming up. All right, so let's take a look. Here's your first question. Homework question number 1. I want you to solve 3x minus 1 equals 11. Go ahead and try to solve that. Awesome. So I'm going to go through this really quickly, just in case you didn't get it right, but I'm pretty sure you probably did. To get rid of the minus 1, I'm going to use a plus 1 on both sides. The minus 1 and the plus 1 are going to cancel on the left side here. I'm going to get 3x equals 12. And now I'm back to a one-step equation. In order to get rid of the multiplication that's happening between the 3 and the x, I have to divide both sides by 3, and now the x is all by itself. I get x equals 4. Let's try another one. Let's do a second homework question. What about something like, let's do x over 5 plus 2 equals 7. X over 5 plus 2 equals 7. I'm going to pause here for just a moment while you try to work this out on your paper. So, first thing we're going to do here is we're going to subtract 2 on both sides. We're going to get x over 5 equals 2 minus 2 is gone. 7 minus 2 is 5. We're going to multiply both sides by 5, and we're doing that because the opposite of division is multiplication, and we end up getting that x is equal to 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. All right, I'm going to ask you to do one more practice question tonight, and then this lesson will be over. And your homework will be done, and that'll be great. And then tomorrow when you come back, we'll be all ready to go to move forward here. Last question, number 3. Solve this equation. Go for it. So what I'm going to do to solve this is I'm going to subtract the 1 from both sides. I've got to get rid of that plus the addition of the subtraction first. The opposite of plus 1 is minus 1, so those are going to go away. Negative 19, take away 1. Now I know negatives and positives are a little tricky for some people, and I want us to always think about money for a moment. If I owe someone $19 and then I owe them another $1, what do I owe them now? Well, the answer is I owe them $20. So we're going to write negative 20 there. We're going to bring our 2x straight down. Now we're back to a one-step equation. The way that I solve this one-step equation, because it is a multiplication question, I am going to divide both sides by 2. I'm going to cross out those 2's, and I'm going to end up getting x is equal to negative 20 divided by 2, which is negative 10. I hope that was a good little introduction for you to two-step equations. Just by watching this video tonight, you're going to save us 10 or 15 minutes in class tomorrow. I hope that while you're watching this video, you're writing down any questions you weren't sure about and taking some notes, because I'm going to come in tomorrow, I'm going to ask if there's any questions at all, and if you have any, I want you to share them with me. If not, we're going to briefly go over this lesson to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and we're going to jump straight into group activities after that. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night, and take care.